Hello, welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. I'm your host, Alfred. I'm here with Kate Magdziuk from DraftKings Live. She's the editorial coordinator over there. And then also, obviously, one of the founding members of BallBlast football website and podcast. She just got verified on Twitter, I think like a week ago. So congratulations for that. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing well. I feel like I have a renewed sense of my identity now that I have a blue check mark. That's sort of the dream. I feel like I can just quit here and now, and I'll be good.
I mean,
And on a high note.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know. I literally don't even know the steps to take to get verified, but congratulations. I think it is a big deal. Um, yeah, to open this up, I actually want to put you on the spot for a minute. This was not in the show sheet, but I think we have a mutual acquaintance, perhaps. Do you happen to remember a guy who worked at the Orange Theory Pittsburgh front desk for many years?
Hell yeah. Wait, I know a bunch of guys in Orange Theory Pittsburgh. That's so weird. Um, don't tell me. Oh my gosh, what's his name? What's his name?
He is in the fantasy space.
Oh, I actually didn't know there was a fantasy space. He's in the fantasy space?
Yeah. So
No way. Okay.
big reveal, Austin Nance.
Oh my God. He's in fantasy?
Yeah, he does. We're doing some stuff together. We're kind of doing the C2C Debbie stuff and some college football. Yeah. So Austin Nance, he knew I was going on with you, and he's like, "Oh, ask her if she remembers me." Apparently, he worked the front desk for like the Orange Theory in Pittsburgh when you were there. He did not expect you to necessarily remember him, but I thought that would be just like a fun thing. So
No, I do, but I can't I don't know. It's just so weird when your worlds like
collide. Right. So yeah, we're good buddies, kind of met on the Twitter. I mean, I don't really know him in person, but we've obviously done some talking on Zoom and different things like that. So we're doing stuff together for this side of things, the college fantasy and stuff like that. So yeah, we're all a small world, it's pretty crazy. So I think he's still in Pittsburgh or somewhere near. He's definitely in Pennsylvania, I believe. So maybe you guys can get a beer or something.
Heck yeah.
But
seriously.
all right. So that was just a fun opener, but I know you obviously play Dynasty. I know BallBlast does a lot of Dynasty contents, but are you in any Debbie leagues? Have you ever taken it to the next level to do like campus to Canton leagues, or what's your experience with those things?
So I actually did my first Debbie league this season and this like past season, and I've already given up my team and I feel terrible. Because I didn't know enough to go in and be active in the league. So I kind of felt bad because everybody would like send trade offers and I didn't feel I'm always somebody I want to fully understand my situation and I've been taken advantage of a couple of times in some trades as a dynasty player. So it's definitely made me more weary. But after this season, I feel like we have, and with my experience with DraftKings, I have gotten more comfortable with college football because usually my grind, I don't watch a ton of college football. My life is already football. So adding all of these games on top doesn't usually work for my schedule. But I was able to watch a bit more college football because I was trying to get more familiar so I could understand more of the work that I was doing. And now that I had that opportunity, I do think I'm trying to incorporate that rookie research and college resource a little bit earlier in my fantasy trajectory. Usually, it's literally like as soon as the NFL season stops, I immediately start just totally grinding rookie tape and doing that nonstop. So I'm hoping this will help me transition to more of a year-long scouting process instead of, that like February to April process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I've learned that, the kind of the deeper getting into this, that, it never really needs to stop, which is great for people who are obsessive and just always want to be grinding tape and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it always pays to know the class 2 or 3 classes out. Right. And that's so that's something, even if you're quote unquote just in Dynasty, which Dynasty is great. No issues with that. I love Dynasty, but you're not necessarily in Devy. But even knowing Dynasty, knowing these classes 2 and 3 years out. So that means knowing the sophomores in college, knowing the juniors in college, and having a decent feel for who's going to be in those classes once it comes time for them to be in the NFL helps you gauge your draft picks better. So, when you're trading picks, right? If you're trading the 2022 first round pick or the 2023 first round pick, you need to have a decent idea of putting or trading for it. Put faces to those picks, right? I mean, you need to know, is there going to be a quote unquote generational player in 2023 that I want to try to be in position when that time comes, have multiple first round picks. And if I'm not the number one pick, be able to package and trade up at that time, if the guy declares whatever, everything works out. But it's really valuable to know. And that's what I've gotten into the Dynasty, and then Devy, you kind of have to, because you can actually draft those players. But even in Dynasty, I mean, it's worth it so you can actually be a better trader looking 2 and 3 years down the line.
Oh, absolutely.
And now,
looking at, players who pre-scouted the 2020 class. God, if you loaded up on 2020 picks, you're feeling pretty good about your Dynasty team at this point. So the goal is to sort of be able to do that any given year and know which years are going to be the most valuable. So I definitely think that's an area of my game that I look forward to working on, and hopefully you can help me out in the coming season.
yeah, I mean, I'm always open. I'm not big enough. I'm not verified, so my DMs are wide open. So anybody can always pick my brain. But yeah, I mean, so in the 2023 pick, like in a typical Dynasty league, I mean, people are going to be very open to sending those. I think 2 years down the line, they're like, oh, I don't care if I can get something now for 2 years later. But so it's always worth knowing if those are going to be valuable. So I will say this: so you left the Devy league at this point, is that right? And you may start up later or something like that. So
I might consider it. I might do a startup maybe this season. I think the key is to sort of have an idea of the players that I drafted, because I jumped into the Devy draft. I had no idea who anybody was. I just picked names. So I feel like I have a little bit of a better grasp after watching some more college football this season, after diving into my rookie research a bit earlier, gets you familiar with a lot of the other players. I think having a little bit of that knowledge before you head into the actual draft is very helpful, because I think that was where my big downfall was. I just didn't know. I feel like I started on the planet Pluto or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, knowledge is power, right? So you definitely it's hard, and to know. I made some tremendous mistakes looking now. I mean, I haven't done this for years and years and years, but a couple of years, 3 years ago, started my first, and made some terrible decisions on guys that, my first ever Devy pick, I think, was Trey Sermon, who, he's whatever now, but like he's going to be a mid-round pick. Now he's finally in the rookie pool, but that's worthless almost. I mean, it's like, whatever. Okay, I'll put him on the back of my bench and maybe he'll have a game or two if everyone else gets injured. So you kind of touched on this, but before we get more into it, I'm curious if you want to name for our listeners, or for anybody who's listening to this, maybe in your someone from your following that will pick this up, and not necessarily be in Devy, but if you want to hear more about Devy, like, what are barriers to this format? I mean, you touched on it. It's just knowing the players, like getting so deep where is that the biggest barrier? Is there something else? Anything else that you would say? Just so people in my world can maybe make it more, I want to make it more accessible. I think it's a super fun format, and I want to know what people who aren't in this world feel is the barrier, so I can work on that and put out content that may help it make more accessible.
Oh yeah, I love that. I think the biggest barrier for me was sort of not like I wanted to do all of the research. I wanted to dive in with full knowledge, but I didn't feel like I had a really good uh, base starting point, like Devy for beginners. I didn't feel like I had a good intro into that. I know I feel like if you are making Devy content, you are generally of expertise, because that's a very small niche group. But sometimes, like, I just want some like beginner, on Reddit, like explain like I'm five. I want some explain like I'm five for Debbie, and just to get my feet wet. Some fun players to draft. I think the key is really like how I got into fantasy football. I drafted guys and then I continued to follow them, through their season. So having a stake in the game is definitely what is going to, get you hooked, and having a stake in the game that, you can watch develop. I think, maybe having some of those like intro picks, like easy picks. I don't know, round by round, a couple of those easy flyers that you do think that, might be, good players to root for, have good storylines, something to grab you so that you're pulled in. I don't know if that makes
I
sense.
think that's some really nice advice, especially for me, because you're right. Like it is kind of this. I don't want to. I hope it's not clicky, but I understand that it's a cool kids club. Oh, we know the sophomore at Tulane who's gonna blow up, and but I don't want it to be that way. Like I said, I really want to make it accessible so people feel like, hey, we want you to come in, play, enjoy this with us, and that's why I named my podcast, Why Wait Till Sunday, because there's a whole lot of fun to be had on Saturdays, and Tuesday night action and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. So I think it's a great point. And like you said, so this it's a great segue actually into your role at DraftKings, because you said you want to be invested and know the storylines and know the players. Honestly, this year, getting into college DFS on DraftKings, which I'm through and through a DraftKings guy. I don't love the format in FanDuel. The aesthetic in DraftKings just really attracts me. I like the way that you can follow your little circle and get into the green and all that stuff. But doing college DFS and knowing these depth charts, because you have to, because injuries or whatever, and you can find the value, the third string running back for Tennessee or whatever this week is a guy you want to have. That made me really know these players, and that made me want to follow along. And like you said, the beauty of following along from sophomore year in college all the way through getting on your NFL team, and then your NFL success, you feel like these guys for years, and it's super fun. So explain a little of your role at DraftKings, and then how you see the college football space in DraftKings exists. I played it this year, but it's so much smaller. I mean, like contests with 200 people versus the NFL with like 200,000 people.
Yeah.
So where do you see that maybe changing? Have y'all talked internally about ramping up the contests or anything like that at DraftKings?
So at DraftKings, my sort of role as editorial coordinator, I can never find a really great way to describe it because I do a little bit of literally everything. Sometimes I write boxing content, sometimes I write like UFC. Like it totally depends on what our team needs, but basically my role, for the DraftKings Nation group is to, make sure we can put out as much actionable content as possible. So I'll work with search engine optimization. I'll work with Google Analytics. Sometimes it's as simple as making sure, we have, things organized for our writers, and so that they are able to work efficiently, and produce as much content as we can possibly produce, to give our readers actionable advice. Um, so I definitely think my role is to sort of maximize our team's capabilities, and that takes on a lot of different roles. And I'm very lucky because my manager, is pretty, good about letting me get involved. Like if I have a taste for something and I'm like, oh, this kind of looks interesting. Do you mind if I give this a shot? Like he'll let me dive in, and that's pretty cool. In terms of where college, could be going with DraftKings, I think it's just a matter of, hopefully it's sort of like testing the market with those small 200 people contests. I think, the key is going to be to keep filling up those contests because it, they're going to follow the money. Everybody's going to follow the money, especially in this industry. That's what this is is all about from the DraftKings side of it, whatever side you're on, the casinos, it all comes down to money. So I think just proving the market is going to be the key there. And I mean, gosh, we've seen how quickly NFL DFS has blown up, NBA DFS. If there's a market for it, I think if you build it, he will come. I think this I think that's kind of what we're gonna see, hopefully with college DFS, and I do think that would be a really cool way to get people more invested in Devi and, just giving them some of those quick hits, quick players to root for. I think that could be a big key to expanding that space a little bit more and making it more accessible to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, for me, I guess it depends on what level of obsession you want to have or whatever. But I love having a reason to watch Hawaii San Jose State at 10 p.m. on a Saturday. Like I think it's fun to have that, and certainly. Depending on your stage of life, you may or may not want to stay up that late, but like it's fun to be invested. Like you said, follow the players, having that connection. It's all about connection, honestly, even if it's with fantasy, like you want to have a connection with these players, and there's no better way than to have that click that button on your app and have this player, and now they're like your team. They're trying to get your stats to win you some money, all that kind of stuff, and it's really fun and just a new thing. And one thing with college is really fun. DraftKings, I actually don't know how they do this, but they select different games. There's so many games, but you're not picking from all, whatever it is, 80 something games a week. They limit the pool to 12 to, I think it's somewhere between 12 and 15 games on the main slate. So you're still limited in the player pool. It's not truly infinite the way it like could be. So, but it changes every week. So I like that. It's a new puzzle every week. Whereas in the NFL, you've got the same teams every week. In college, sometimes they'll try to do the big teams, I think, every week, but you'll get a little fun one. Like all of a sudden Hawaii, San Jose State's in there, and you got to kind of go comb that depth chart, see if there's anyone you want to play. So in that way, it takes more work, because you don't always know every team. But I think it's super fun because also, anytime there's something like that, I think there's an edge if you have the knowledge or can find the nugget somewhere. And hopefully I'm providing those nuggets for you. So, I guess similarly, do you see, personal opinion, the gaming / gambling / DFS space for college, do you see it growing? Because I think I do. My hypothesis is that it will grow because, EA just announced the video game will be coming back in like 2 years, I guess, maybe sooner, hopefully sooner. You've got this potential for marketing players, marketing their likeness. And, if you can market a guy, if Trevor Lawrence can be, selling you a shampoo, people are going to feel that connection. And like, I know Trevor Lawrence now more, and I'm interested in having him on my fantasy team every week or whatever in DFS. And then you've got expanding the playoff potentially. So from 4 teams now, we might have 6 or 8 teams. So it seems like what needs to happen to me is though it becomes from a regional situation where it's like, oh, I live in the South, I like the SEC. You live in the Midwest, you like the Big Ten. Or I think, are you still in Pennsylvania?
I am.
Okay. So yeah, you like the Big Ten in Pennsylvania, whatever, but become more of a national game. And I think some of those things can make it that way. What's your sense there?
Oh, I definitely think there's so much room for college football to grow. I think there's just so many there are so many teams. It's sort of like it doesn't really matter where you're from. There's something for you to get invested in. I went to an all girls college. Essentially, we didn't have a football team. I have a sweatshirt that says like "still undefeated" because we have no football team. But like even I have like I root for Notre Dame because I went to a bunch of Notre Dame games growing up. Like there is always a way for you to find a personal connection to one of these teams, whether it be your locality, whether it be at a relative that goes there. There's the market is so wide here. The only thing that I think is sort of an interesting challenge, and maybe this is why it's harder to grow this betting sort of part of this game and injecting more money into the NCAA. Like you have to always consider the arguments for and against paying your players. And I think the more money you inject into gambling, NCAA sports in general, you're going to have more heat on that fire. And I think that might be a barrier. Do you think that?
Yeah, I do think obviously there's plenty of gambling on college, but I think there's a sense of maybe the NCAA doesn't love that. I mean, they seem to be pretty interested in keeping this, in my opinion, a bit of a mirage, but this image of, the amateur situation they have going on, the student athlete, but at the top end, I mean, maybe the player who is for, I don't know, Southern Miss third string, and they're getting their doctorate in something and playing football on the side. Yeah, that's a student athlete. But these high end guys, I mean, there's no secret. These guys are going to the NFL. People are declaring for the NFL after 3 years, the minimum, more and more and more and more. It is clearly a development league with the intention of going to the pros. And anyway, I don't necessarily want to get too deep into that whole muck and mire, but I certainly think that you have interested parties that want to keep up this idea of the wholesome amateur situation, but it's just really not. And I think if that gets broken,
another layer to the complicated,
right? It's complicated. Yeah. I mean, it certainly is. I think once that gets breached, which is probably coming at some point, then it's going to be a bit of the floodgates open in terms of just taking it to the next level with marketing and kind of just general knowledge of this game. You even start paying players in any way, all of a sudden, you can market them. The video game can have the players and the names. And so then people can play. I mean, and I've thought about this too. The younger generation, I do wonder, this is completely off the cuff here, but I do wonder if, FIFA is huge. Video game sports is huge. You've got, people, esports is huge. And we haven't had an NCAA game since this all came about, right? I mean, so kids, I'm almost, into my 40s now. The kids these days, they like to play the game. They want to be invested. They want a tangible representation of what they're seeing on the screen. And that comes in the form of video games. And they haven't had the college football thing going on. So, getting into that space, and I think they have like college esports teams now. Like, it's crazy the way it's taken off. Right. And so I think that having that in the space could be huge for a younger generation to get really into college football in a way that we haven't seen before. So I'm interested.
It's an easy way to learn for those tactile learners. I'm a big hands-on person, so usually I'm learning the best when I'm managing rosters and I'm getting involved in my own analysis and decision making. That's true for a lot of kids. And let's be honest, that rush of, I'll never forget the rush of the Madden rush. You love those moments. And sometimes I've grown to like players because I like the way they play in Madden. And it's such a goofy part of that game, but it's a part of the whole world of sports that I think people are definitely missing out on from that younger generation. I know my brother-in-law, I think he just turned 40. I want to say he just turned 40. And he's been fiending for a new NCAA game. I know he's over the moon. We have to get them the pre-release on that or something, because even our generation is going to be so hyped to have that video game back. And I think just even in terms of our generation, you're going to make plenty of money on that and get more people involved, but especially the younger generation, that's such a great way to relate to kids and teach kids things is by giving them a video game for it. Insane.
Absolutely. And like you said, the whole connection thing. So, you start a dynasty with Bryce Young in Alabama, and you're playing with him and he wins a Heisman for you. And then it's I also want to have it's all about having a piece of the action that's yours, right? So I want to have him on my DFS team. I want to have him in my Devy league. it's so fun. You feel like, I mean, we're all like losers, whatever, but we feel like we're GMs, right? We feel like we have a piece of this action that's happening in real time. That's why fantasy is so appealing, whether it's college or, the Packers. You have your Aaron Rodgers or whatever. So, I think there's a disconnect there. I grew up in the South, especially, and loved college football always. My parents went to the University of Florida, so like always was raised on Saturdays as a huge day, but I don't think that's everyone's story. And so if you don't have that, I think there's a disconnect because there's not a lot of other ways, unless you either went to a school or your parents were big fans growing up, that you connect. But at NFL, you can connect because of all these other things, especially like we said, in the younger generation, you're playing Madden as a kid. So you're connecting. It's all about getting that. So I'm excited going forward. I hope that it'll get bigger because, like I said, why wait till Sunday? We have so much fun on Saturday. And then, so I will say this. We'll start to maybe wrap it up here. But have you ever played a CFB slate on DraftKings?
I haven't, and I'm sort of regretting that now. After having this conversation. So as soon as the 2021-2022 season opens up, I think we should have a private contest. Are you able to set up private contests for CFB?
I'll figure it out. Yeah, I hope so.
There we go. Let's do that.
Yeah, no, that'll be fun. And I will say the COVID year was extra horrible. So one thing about college sports, and I think this is something that probably is a barrier as well, is the injury reporting. In the NFL, we get injury reports and, they're designated and the questionable tag and all that stuff. And we have so much information about injuries and you can make educated decisions. In college, I mean, literally 10 minutes before kickoff, you can get a report that so-and-so is not dressed out. And it's horrible. I mean, at 11:50, I have to be at my phone to make changes in that 10-minute span. And so there's some ways to kind of get around that, like have your backup plans already in mind and things like that for anybody who might be questionable. But the injury problem is a real issue. I would love for them to have more structured rules around that, which again, I think comes from the transition from truly amateur to having the understanding that there's people with stakes in this game. Like you said, gambling wise, fantasy wise, the consumer, us, we have stakes in these decisions and we need to know, instead of like coaches are allowed to just literally say nothing. And then you only find out because the guy's not on the sideline. Like it's just ridiculous. And you're waiting for probably like a 18-year-old, reporting intern who's standing on the sidelines to tweet it out. Like it's crazy. That's literally how you find out sometimes. So that's a big problem with the CFB slates, but it's also very, very fun. And one thing I love is that it's super flex. So for the college lineups, you get to pick 2 quarterbacks, and that just means more scoring. You have 2 stacks you can do. I mean, we talk in GK about stacking teams. Well, now you can stack the whole game, including both quarterbacks, multiple receivers, and things like that. So it's really fun. And then you're talking about the tournaments. You can get creative and say, well, I'm not going to do 2 quarterbacks. So that's going to be different because everyone figures you have to have a quarterback in the super flex spot. But if it's a slate where you don't love 2 quarterbacks, be a little different and throw a running back in the super flex.
Super flex is obviously that is the wave of the future. I'm sure that's going to become I feel like we've already seen it take over in the DFS world a little bit. I'm sure like home leagues are going to slowly transition over to Superflex. And I feel like that is going to become the new norm, but it just adds another layer to the game and gives you another opportunity for a unique lineup and to do something different to win your contest.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a little bit more. And then there's some weird things like even the fact that I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's interesting that they don't have a TE, like a tight end spot. It's just all the tight ends are lumped in with receivers. So essentially it's just like pass catchers as a big group. So like even playing a tight end at all is probably an advantage because generally people, think receivers are better than tight ends. But if there's a tight end who like dominates his college receiving room, essentially plays like a wide receiver, like Kyle Pitts was fairly underowned in many, many lineups this year just because he's a tight end. And people, I think, just don't think tight end when they have all these wide receivers to choose from. So that's another wrinkle. So there's a couple different things that provide some new strategies and some new things to try out. So it's super fun, but there are some drawbacks. I mean, the injury situation is a big problem. I mean, I lost some actual money this year on
Oh,
some injuries, like especially thinking you're good. The first wave happens, and then the 3:30 games start, and like I just wasn't at my phone. I mean, I actually have a life sometimes, so you're just not there, and you check your lineup later and you're just like, oh crap, that guy like just didn't play, like just found out 3:28, for a 3:30 kickoff. So that's a bummer from time to time. The lineup otherwise like smashed, and I won a little, but it would have been a lot if he scored even 20 points or whatever. So well, Kate, it's been really fun. I appreciate you coming on the show, talking about your experience with DraftKings, and I hope that I could even light a tiny little fire to be more excited about the college football side of things for next year.
I do feel like you invited me on this podcast, but I feel like I'm walking away with more than you probably did, or your listeners probably did, because you gave me plenty of nuggets that do make me more excited for the college football season to come. And I feel like I built a nice layer, to start this season, and I look forward to getting more involved and seeing what you're up to next season, and how you're working, and take all the tips I can.
Yeah, it should be fun. And actually, I think um, later in the off season, so the spring or whatever, Austin, your friend from Orange Theory, and I and some other people might be running some kind of C2C college side mock drafts. So it's an easy way to dip your toe into that water. It's a mock. There's no stakes involved, but just try your hand at picking players. See what happens if you take certain players in certain rounds, and how does your team look. And so that could be fun too. I'll certainly send you an invite when we get into that space, because we want people to, like you said, feel comfortable without having to invest anything and just try it out like you did. You tried it out in real time with a real league, but maybe even just a mock, see what happens. And like you said, know these players' names. And get used to rooting for them on Saturday. So anything else you'd like to plug before we get out of here? I know you're doing tons of work, and you and Michelle putting out awesome stuff all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out the BallBlast Football Podcast. We just relaunched our show, added a third host for the first time ever. So we just added Jake Trowbridge. That's a show with my wife and I, Michelle. And we just added this third guy, Jake, who is a absolute rock star, but we love talking football. We're looking forward to the 2021 season over at BallBlast Football. We've got a bunch of rookie profiles that we're launching off. So check those out. We've got a lot of really good work. All of our writers are chomping at the bit to try to get a jump on the rookie season, get a jump on your fantasy teams, and dominate your rookie draft. So we're hustling over there. Check out the website, ballblastfootball.com, and please holler if there are some prospects that you would like us to research and write up, and you want to know about names I should be early on, please holler.
Yeah, awesome. That's great information. And Jake's very, very funny. I think he was doing some impressions somehow during 2020 about celebrity impressions, and weaving it in with some fantasy football stuff. So that was all very funny. Also, I think a talented musician.
The tough times there.
Yeah. So that's great. Well, congratulations on all your success as well, and thanks for joining us on Why Wait Till Sunday. We will see you guys next time.